Any of you know the producer, director, Michael Bay, Michael Bay? He's done what? Armageddon and Pearl Harbor, Transformers, and probably in your field, one of the leaders on pyrotechnics of technology. Well, just 2 days ago, he was addressing a mere 104,000 people. As an expert in technology as he is, this was at the Consumer Electronics Show, where Jeff would often be if he weren't with us today. Let's just take a look at what happens when you will push the limits. Well, so far so good, huh?
How is everyone today? My job as a director is I get to dream for a living.
Michael, you know, you're known for such unbelievable action. What inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to... the type is all off, sorry, but I'll just wing this.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
The Curve? How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movies?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Michael Bay for joining us.
So, you know, I'm not saying that it's guaranteed what's going to happen in minutes, but that is warning you what's possible when you push the technological frontiers, and that's a guy who's expert in these things, and he's also not pushing his own buttons. It does give you a pause to reflect on that time where you remember where President Clinton had the wrong State of the Union address role put in, and he mentioned that to Al Gore while he was in the midst of delivering it, and Gore went off and had it switched, but none of us knew this till later. But anyhow, the good news here is we're not using any teleprompter today. We have no script. And nobody's going to be walking off stage in a huff. No matter what I do, I'm counting on the audience, of course, to save me, because we want to have a lot of audience participation. We have a topic on bosses as brands. Now, as we take a look at the issue of bosses, take a look at the leadership issues, the good news is we're not going to be talking about the governor of New Jersey. Or even the mayor of Toronto, or even the mayor of San Diego. So whatever your thoughts are about leadership in public office, we're going to be focusing surely on hybrid economies, but leaning a little bit more towards the business and corporation side today. But just one other caveat, though, with all the dignity and eloquence and erudition of yesterday, too many of you in this room, as I survey the room, are familiar with my own personal hijinks and know I can destroy all that great dignity, which is why we're very fortunate to have a panel with us to actually restore not just the wisdom, but also the dignity of this great event. As we look at this topic, it's lonely at the top, that's why. It's putting CEOs on a spotlight isn't something that this particular set of CEOs today really liked as a topic. As a matter of fact, they said sure, and then they said pretty much any topic but this one. So, and this is why, as you'll see, being on the spotlight comes.
Yes. Hi, do you have a table for dinner? Speak to me, sir. How many in your bag? I'm alone. Alone?
Alone?
Follow me, sir. This way, sir.
Thank you.
Would you care for a cocktail, sir?
Yes, I'd like a Totkin Vonic.
A Totkin Vonic?
Yes.
Very good, sir.
Oh, and Captain, could you turn out the spotlight, please?
Certainly.
And could everybody go back to talking?
Certainly.
You get the idea. It continues along for another 5 minutes of the same joke, but is that, yeah, who wants to be a spectacle all the time, making the superhuman sacrifices that the job requires? And we're very fortunate to have some friends with us today who make that sacrifice on our behalf. We ask business leaders as brands, or even as heroes. If you think they shuddered from the topic of business leaders as brands, I didn't even dare show them this next slide. About the heroic quality. And yet, when you think about it, yes, there's each of our two on stage right now. But you can think of what the media often does, analysts, academics, people like you, John Byrne, sort of puffing these guys up in a certain imagery, is that they take on a certain folk heroic quality in respective societies, thinking of who they represent, whether or not it's Carlos Slim or Peter Brabeck or, of course, Gates, Jobs, Welch. Or what is it that makes it possible to think of people in the same breath as we talk about authentic national heroes, these great stars, whether or not it's de Gaulle or Gandhi or, of course, all the greats on here, is that what does they represent that's somewhat different or similar than this? This was a year and a half ago in Logan City, Utah. A speeding motorist, a cyclist, smashed his cycle right underneath a Mercedes. It burst into flames. 18 construction workers, well, 18 people were watching, but 3 construction workers ran to try to lift the car. Of course, they couldn't. But when the other people saw these guys trying, everybody raced in to help, and they freed the motorist. It's an incredible story. And it's a reminder, because exactly this time last year in the New York Times, Joe Nocera wrote a piece about what a cynical race we should be, that humanity is not out there to do heroic things, and talking about a tragedy at a New York subway last year where a Korean American was pushed off the platform. 18 people, coincidentally, were there to watch. And in this case, nobody did anything except one photographer who moved closer to sell some photos and talking about how horrible it was to see the man's head smashed as the train came by. It was, not quite chest high. People could have reached down and helped them. They probably could have made a difference. They didn't. This is a reminder. We have choices. What's different is the leadership. We think of the Sandy Hook School, or the people who hurled themselves in the way of speeding bullets for no self-gain to protect others, is that there's a role that we look for certain figures to do for us in society. What do heroes do? They provide identification. They provide a code of conduct. What's the right thing to do? A lot of times groups don't do the right thing because we don't know. We're caught in a panic. We're not trained. We're not sure. They bring a human dimension to complexity. People say, oh, you people in academia have too much personalization of business stories into these human dramas, or that analysts are gossipists, or whatever. Well, there is a certain difficulty in dealing with the genuine complexity of intergalactic financial systems and things. This does bring a human touch to it. A sense of justice. Who's accountable? Path through volatility, uncertainty. Rising from adversity, that resilience. How do we get back in there? They give us a path. That's what heroes always do, and that's what brands do. That's why we pay a premium, whether or not it's some internet website or a luxury good or a great beverage or fabulous films. It's that something about the brand tells us that this is better, this is different. It's a shorthand, and we shouldn't complain about it. It doesn't mean we're lazy or gossips. It means that we're using it as a shorthand. And society asks us to create heroes. Now, Francis Beinecke, who's here in the room, and I next week are going to be talking about this data. In the interest of time, I'm going to spare this entirely, and also Sir Richard Edelman, who created the data, doesn't sue me because it's embargoed, I think, until Davos. But basically, they're suggesting that we have some of the greatest gap yet in trust between government and industrial leaders is out right now. And when you take a look at their survey of 30,000 folks, in-depth surveys around the world, they're finding critical issues and what CEOs need to do to build trust that all have to do with this theme about the public presence, about communicating clearly. about engaging with various constituencies, being involved, being an active media presence, and that he's arguing, as the Edelman study will be released in a week, talks about the importance of the CEO as the chief education officer. Well, there are downsides to this, of course, that as I think Billy Wilder said, as Orson Welles walked by there, but for the grace of God, Jeff goes God, right? Is that the grandiosity that can build in. And there's a generation that preceded the folks we have with us today, where many of them names were hyphenated with the names they they led, perhaps a little too much in some cases. So how do we watch for that problem? It's a balancing act. And talking with Indra on the phone, Indra, you're talking about the tight wire and how difficult it is to decide, when are you public and when do you recede and bring others in the organization? If you're the chief education officer and the chief technology officer and the chief marketing officer and the chief, doesn't anybody else work in the building? And we, in fact, let me come to talk about who our panelists are to bring some wisdom and insight into these topics. Indra, as we know, is a celebrated alum of the School of Management. And in fact, let me show you Indra was just on CNBC this morning, but Indra, don't worry, we won't be showing that clip.
All across this country, people took the Pepsi challenge. In tests like these nationwide, more people prefer Pepsi over Coca-Cola. Pepsi. It's Pepsi. Taste that winning taste.
An American icon in a battle of the titans.
Is Coke a dirty word around here?
It's poison.
An outspoken leader
Can you believe this?
of a corporate empire. Not just Pepsi, it's PepsiCo. 19 different billion-dollar brands and more than 3,000 products. Frito-Lay,
$22 billion brands, I know, they got
Quaker Oats, Tropicana, Gatorade. Millions of snacks, sodas, and foods consumed every day in 200 countries around the planet.
I want every product you eat and drink to be a PepsiCo product. So I want a larger share of your stomach.
The culture of the company is we have to be faster, try harder, be more innovative.
In a nation plagued by obesity, a company on a mission to make new breakthroughs and healthier foods.
My mandate is to grow the nutrition business, a $30 billion business by 2020.
But not every.
So, with that as a setup, Indra is the chairman and chief executive officer of Pepsi and PepsiCo in its global food and beverage portfolio. The 22 brands, as you heard, to generate more than $1 billion each in annual retail sales. Its main businesses include Quaker, Tropicana, Gatorade, Frito-Lay, Pepsi-Cola, with more than $65 billion in annual revenue. Pepsi-Cola makes and PepsiCo makes enjoyable foods good for you, and foods that are fun, that are loved throughout the world. She's the chief architect of Performance and Purpose, which we hope we'll talk about later. In the morning, the company's commitment to sustained growth with a focus on performance and human environment and talent sustainability. They have had a spectacular last year. Of course, their stock is soaring at all-time highs. She has a really decorated career with no distinction more important than being, of course, a graduate of the Yale School of Management and a trustee of Yale, a fellow of the Yale Corporation. Indra? Indra, how do you manage that balancing act? Between being so public and having others in the organization to step in, to be your surrogate. I mean, there are times where you're asked to be a symbol of everything, in particular, in the multiple roles and what you represent as Fortune magazine reminds us, the most powerful woman business leader on the planet, is that everybody wants you to be out there symbolically for something. And how do you say yes? How do you say no? And how, I know how we talked you into doing this one, but how do you decide when to say no to the other events?
This one is a labor of love. But let me step back a little bit and talk about the topic itself, Jeff, before I answer your question specifically. I think that when you become a CEO, you're no longer your own person. You're really a public property. The company owns you in a way because you've got to do all those things you laid out. And the media and policymakers, all of them believe that you are the person that has to be the face of the company. It doesn't matter who you send in your stead. It could be somebody else that's reporting to you. But at the end of the day, the credibility and the voice of the company comes when the CEO shows up and puts their name, face and presence on the line. Now herein lies the problem. There are CEOs who've got great presence but make a specific decision not to engage with the media, but they do it when they become a CEO. Example is my predecessor, Steve Reinemund. Great presence, could do fantastic in a movie. I mean, he had great television appearance, but he made a decision the day he became a CEO that he will not be a public persona. And he never deviated from that. Anybody asked him to appear on TV, he said not available. Any press interviews, not available. He said, write about the company, but I'm not going to appear at all. Now, post Steve Reinemund, I come in, female, first time in the history of PepsiCo, foreign born from an emerging country, came from the strategy and finance area, and then came from this school called Yale SOM. You put it all together, and all of a sudden, it's pretty interesting stuff. And then way back in my past, in the records, somebody wrote saying that I sing in the corridors and walk around bare feet. Whoever said that, I don't know. But they used all of that and created an image of me of being this completely different CEO that's going to break the mold. And all of a sudden, a brand was born. And I had no option but to work with it and shape it, because if I said I didn't want to participate in the public domain, it's like she's hiding. She doesn't want to be the role model. So you're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. But the one comment I remember that was very interesting, Jeff, and it was really a reporter from a magazine you might have been involved with in the past. He came to see me and he said, Indra, our job in the next few years is to build you up and build you up and build you up. I said, why? I don't want to be built up. How about building up PepsiCo? He said, we need to build you up because when we take you down, it's a great story. Right. Okay? And, you know, at least he was honest.
Right.
But the problem is, I had no say in the build-up, and CEOs will make mistakes, companies will go through issues. When they take me down and write the story, I have no say in how deep that story is going to be, and I've lived through all of it. So I'll just come back and say, when you become the CEO, especially of big public companies with big brands that are iconic, you have no choice but to be the public face. You have no choice but to go through all of those issues you talked about in bosses as brands. The real question is, do you have a great communications head around you that helps you sort of manage through the difficult situations? But it's inevitable. You've just got to find a way to suck it up and not view yourself as bosses as brands alone, bosses as whipping boys, bosses as chief morale officer, all of it.
Is there an image that you try consciously to cultivate in any way? You know, I don't think that Ralph Lauren probably plays that much polo. I could be wrong. I don't know that. I don't know that Tommy has spent that much time in the hood, but I don't know that. You know, Sam Zell once told me that, and very happily showing me all the profiles written on him that talk about his squash playing, his motorcycle, and his cowboy boots. And he said, you know where they get that? And I said, no, where? He said, I manufacture that, I give it to them. Every journalist thinks they got a little color on Sam Zell. They run away with that little thing. And he can go off with being crazy as a fox because they're distracted by those kind of things. I remember, you know, Jim Out, we were talking about some telecom CEOs. One of them, a dozen years ago, when he became CEO, came to me with a platoon of his PR people saying, we need an image, we need a platform. My predecessor had education, what's left? You know? You didn't do something like that, did you?
You know, I don't think, it was not a personal image issue. At that point, I was most interested in saying, what kind of a company do I want PepsiCo to be? And I wanted my image to be completely intertwined with the image of PepsiCo. So when we articulated performance with purpose as the key direction of PepsiCo, this was not about purpose being corporate social responsibility. And I want to differentiate the two. Performance with purpose was about how we make money, not how we spend the money. So we wanted to transform the portfolio and make that a way to make profits. Be environmentally much more conscious so that when we reduce water use, plastic use, it actually helps the bottom line and helps the performance. If you do right things for your employees, you attract the best and the brightest, and that drives performance. So performance with purpose, as we articulated it, which was really the brand campaign, if you want to call it, was a PepsiCo brand campaign that was also my campaign because I decided to make it, you know, my personal mission to make performance with purpose the driving force behind PepsiCo. And people sometimes call it corporate social responsibility. Wrong. CSR is how you spend the money after you make it. I wanted to redefine what a responsible corporation would do to make the money. And I think the brand that I'm talking about for PepsiCo, which I want to be associated with, and I am today, is this notion of performance with purpose.
Did
And
that-
that's all there is.
You know, it's amazing how many CEOs have taken a very cheapened version of that notion of purpose and waved it around as a banner these days. And the number of books we get coming in. Did your SOM heritage help infuse any of that? There's a right answer to this question, by the way.
No, look, I have to tell you,
Not
Jeff,
everything's case study.
No, Jeff, I am a proud MPPMer, Masters in Public and Private Management. So I am a very proud MPPMer.
Gotten
And I have to
political.
tell you, Yale had a profound influence on me. And this has nothing to do with this forum. I've loved Yale since the day I walked in. I'd love it till the day I die.
Well,
and it has had a profound influence on me, yes.
Another devout Yaley then, Jeff, I saw you were ready to chomp at the bits to come in and join us on this comment, is, but even beyond the Yale issues, let me show you how Jeff will make the choices too as to when to go public. And in an industry of very high profile personalities, Jeff cuts his own path.
Ups its quarterly dividend by 11%. Our Julia Borston is live with the CEO, Jeff Bewkes, to break down the earnings as well as news of layoffs and a possible sale of the Time Warner Center here in New York. Hey, Julia.
Thanks so much, Carl. That's right. I'm joined here by Jeff Bewkes. Better than expected earnings results. The stock is trading higher. Thanks so much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having us.
So your cable division is really driving this growth. And the big question is, you're getting higher cable fees, higher fees from the cable and satellite TV providers. But how much longer can you keep showing this kind of growth in the cable revenue?
You know, the best news in media, probably the strongest trends are in television.
She means cable programming, by the way, not the cable pipeline.
You've got subscribers up, not just in America, all around the world. Viewing is up, time spent viewing is up, programming quality, programming investment is up, more devices that everybody has. And now, all of these networks are going on demand, and if you want to look to the future and see what that's going to do, just look at HBO. The whole schedule's on demand, viewing goes up, you can follow your favorite show. You have some help coming in from subscription VOD companies like Netflix, Amazon. So everything in TV is robust, American, overseas, and since it's about 85% of our company's economics, we feel as though we're focused on the right thing. We've got a rising tide.
Can't beat that for being pretty cheerful and upbeat. Jeff is chairman of the board and chief executive of Time Warner. He was elected chairman of the board in 2009. He served on the board since 2007, became CEO in 2008. Prior to that, Jeff was Time Warner's president and COO from 2006 to 2007 and chairman of Entertainment Networks Group. Many people got to appreciate him, especially back in the chairman CEO days of HBO, where it was in those early days where we've seen other evolving technology industries go more recently, where it's not clear who pays who and how the revenues flow and things like that, these were the wild, wild west days of television that Jeff has gone through. And of course, Jeff is not only also a Yale graduate, but also a fellow, a trustee, a member of the Yale Corporation. Jeff, on the same thing, is there anything that Indra said that you disagree with?
No, but we're in a fortunately different position. We're a media company, so what we're trying to do is convince you that it's not the CEO that's the most powerful person in the world. We think it's Superman. And Jeff, you missed, you had the CEO as a brand, CEO as a hero. You didn't have the CEO as a salesman. And I just want, in that role, to remind everyone that Superman and Wonder Woman are both Warner Brothers property.
This is an upgrade. Last time, just in December, I introduced Jeff, and we used Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes, so we had Porky Pig come on, and Jeff didn't want to claim that one so readily, so I'm glad we did better with Superman.
Yeah. There is one difference with the media companies. Disney would be the exception, but Time Warner has a lot of brands that you know, just as you have $22 billion brand. If you think about the brands, we don't have Time Warner as a brand. It's not a consumer product. We have CNN, HBO, Harry Potter, Superman, Batman. That's the kind of thing that Lord of the Rings, et cetera, that we're trying to create as brands. And these brands are, as the things you drink every day, very tied up with emotional engagement that hopefully each of you has with, I have to keep the grammar right, we're here at Yale, with some of these characters or stories.
Well, Jeff, though you're in an industry and you entered an industry, if you'll forgive me, of oversized egos. You had to work with them. There was a generation, several generations that preceded you. There are fewer of them today, but you didn't want to model yourself against some of those mogul images. We could throw their names around, but there are probably too many lawyers out there right now to bother. But did you consciously pattern yourself against bosses, predecessors, mentors that you had?
No, I think everybody has to be who they are, and I think it's probably true that Steve, who you talked about before, he probably didn't want to do those public performances because he wasn't comfortable doing it. So I think whatever level you're at in a career or in an organization, you should do it the way that's true to you. I think not from a conscious point of view of creating a persona, but from the kind of common sense point of view. It is often said, I hope at Yale SOM, that two of the most important jobs of a CEO are putting in the people and overseeing the development and the refreshing of the strategy of the company. If you think about putting in the people being such an important thing, I don't know how many people you have. We have 40,000 people. I mean, it would be not common sense if we couldn't engage and harness all of the intelligence, the points of view of all those people. So the idea that someone in whatever hierarchical position should try to either cut off or monopolize the kind of input of fresh ideas or think of a ship on the ocean. You've got hopefully somebody up on the bridge looking across the horizon. If something comes up, you want to know. And so you really need in the current world, that's people, but it gets to strategy. With so much change and disruption, you want to have as capable, as comfortable with coming up, raising their hand and saying we're headed in the wrong direction. You need that culture, you need those kind of people, you need iterative practices to figure out when you need to change your business dramatically.
On your team, I mean,
Yeah.
you have a vision, and it's television everywhere is part of what gets hyphenated with you. If performance with purpose and things that Indra has done have resonated so strongly when she comes out. Of course, it's really understanding video on demand. Many say better than almost any of your peers, if not all of your peers. But the TV anywhere, is this your vision, or does it come back from your lieutenants? The press, the media, the trade magazines say that at long last now, you've worked through some of the very talented but legacy lieutenants you had around you, and that you really have now fortified, as of now, your own perfect, ideal leadership team. Are those people executioners? Are they sycophants of the Bewkes vision, or do they challenge you?
Yeah, no, they challenge. It's not, I agree with the vision, but it's a vision we created iteratively over time. Actually, if you think about VOD, video on demand, and I hope this brings questions from the students when we get to that. It's a revolution in TV across the world. It started at HBO 15 years ago. HBO had its entire program schedule on demand 15 years ago, before there was an internet. And it had the internet rights back then. And we also bought the rights to everything, original programs and movies and so forth, in such a way that even the studios, like Warner Brothers, that make those films, don't have the on-demand rights during the HBO window. So what we're trying to do, and this kind of came out trial and error, not whiteboard in the office. It works there. You can all see it there if you have HBO or HBO Go on the internet. And it seemed to us that with the new influx of YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, et cetera, that if we don't take the 100 and so on, every one of you is watching 10 channels a day and have been for a long time. We need to make those on demand on all your devices. We already have, and this is kind of an interesting business or industry transformation problem. There are very few situations as fortunate as this, even with the disruption of the internet. And what I mean by that is that in the developed world, take the United States, 90% of the households in the country are paying already for hundreds of channels of TV. You're all doing it. And it costs less than 1 cup of coffee at Starbucks a day, and you're getting all that fantastic stuff. So the issue wasn't how to get people to adopt or try this. Everybody has it. The issue is to take this fantastic product that everyone uses and that everyone likes and make all your favorite networks and shows available to you on demand at any time on any device with no cost, no action that you have to take. That's a very good situation.
No,
ironically, though, it hasn't happened yet. And
what we just saw Jeff do with us, and we can have a good discussion about the technological strategy and where that's going, as we hope to before the hour runs out, is though you did just model for us what you can do so supremely well, is we all just learned something about video on demand. You brought it in accessible terms. You used visual imagery that was very evocative for us. It's something as a chief communicator, chief salesman, chief educator, whatever you want to call it, it's something that it's different when you do it than when one of your technologically infused lieutenants might do it. That, you know, Ted Turner, as you remember, when they had CNN, used to say that the news is the star, and they downplayed the star. Now, you recognized, in fact, the branding of talent matters and communicating, and just as you did there matters. We'll open the floor up in just a moment for other comments and questions from the group and more discussion with our panel, but just to make sure we have everybody on the panel that's drawn into our discussion. As we've mentioned, of course, we're very fortunate to have Indra, and Indra has been very involved with us regularly, not just out in media, but here on campus in class after class. There with Sharon at the fact that our CEO Summit, in fact, if you may be wondering at this CEO Summit at the New York Stock Exchange why she's wearing the same outfit, it's because it was just the same photo, that Jeff and Ted were presenting her with our Legend in Leadership Award. And then following that, we have, of course, Jeff. And there's Jeff with Ginny Ramadi of IBM to the far left, and Alan Mulally of Ford, KK Modi from India. There's Jeff and Mark Fields. You don't usually see Mark Fields and Alan Mulally together, but you know, Yale made it happen. But anyhow, at that event, there's Jeff giving out another Legend in Leadership Award now to Alan Mulally. Jeff's wondering, you know, when am I getting mine here? Yep, there he is. With Senator Chris Dodd and, of course, Nick Nicholas and a great presentation team when Jeff won. But we also have another panelist, Mr. Fu Chengyu, who was Petroleum Executive of the Year 2012. He was with us at our last CEO Summit in Beijing earlier this fall, sitting next to the CEO of Bank of China, Tian Gaoli, to his right, our left, and of course, Jiwoo Chen from our faculty here to his right. Yes, we decorate our friends. No, but very well deserved. That was Wilbur Ross presenting Legend Leadership Award with Dave Cody of Honeywell and Min-Yun Shing, the CEO of Lifan Group, presenting the award to Mr. Fu, who is chairman of the China Petrochemical Corporation, a Sinopec as it's known, a member of the UN Global Compact Board, chairman of the Global Compact Network, the China Board. He's a standing member of the 12th Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference National Committee. He had formerly been the CEO of Sinopec at a storied time when they had been rebuffed in the famed deals they were going after Chevron. And you named the award, and he's won it. Even in 2008, the Evil Harvard Business Review gave him Best Performing CEO award. When Wilbur presented the award just 2 months ago to him from Yale, he said that Chairman Fu personifies his company's stated mission: enterprise development, contribution to the country, shareholder value creation, social responsibility, and employee well-being. Also, his campaign for energy conservation is quite noteworthy. It's with China's economy 5 times as energy intensive as Japan's. He's had remarkable progress. Another reason was his crisis management of a spill in polypropylene pellets near Hong Kong. And we'll revisit this issue, as you can imagine, shortly. Finally, Sinopec has reduced by 4% sulfur dioxide this year, while still raising earnings and dividends by 20% and nearing completion of the first commercial development of shale gas in China. Mr. Fu, are you with us? Good evening, Mr. Fu. We're sorry to keep you at your office at 10:30 at night. I presume that's your office and not your home. Thanks for joining us. Were you able to hear the discussion up until this point? Could you comment on the themes we've discussed so far, which is you've been a very high-profile CEO. When President Xi Jinping, his first official tour in office, you were with him at his side, going into Russia immediately and off to Africa. You've had a very active presence, both in Chinese leadership circles, but in global leadership circles. I remember we went to Jim Wolfenson's house, and Bob Rubin was there, and Paul Volcker, and suddenly everybody in the room thought they had a special, long-standing personal relationship with you, and we couldn't introduce you to anybody in the U.S. How do you decide when to be so public and when your role as a corporate ambassador is critical, and when you stay back at the shop? That notion of the CEO as the brand.
The death toll from Friday's oil pipeline blast in the port city of Chengyu in...
Did we lose? Yeah, hi.
Its only way is by delivery. So this is whenever you talk to the public, you have to make deliver so that, and the face is being recognized and the company being recognized. And in this way that you have to deal with all the aspects, the stakeholders and the partners and the friends. So in today's world, the company like an energy company, that we cannot do anything just by ourselves. We have to work together with all kind of companies and partners. So you need to make sure that you are being trusted, which is trusted of the company. Okay.
Thank you. You said any question is fair to ask, just so my audience knows that we are really good friends and we are being polite to a guest who's up late at night. Back in the Sinopec deal, the Sinopec days, would it have been more helpful if you had a more public U.S. presence? Some have said that, in fact, I've been one, who have said that the investment bankers and public relations consultants did not serve Sinopec well, as you had been working for years with on the Unocal deal, and Chevron wound up looking like the savior, the white knight, the hero, and it was a mishandled public image. What's your thought about
this is really, yes, this is really related with the image of a company, especially the image of the CEO of the company. You know, China was just in the transition phase, starting in a not too long time. And you know, in the past, that whole China was like a state-owned companies. Now they transform from this to a public company. We call from the planning economy to the market economy. So there are a lot of things that just happened internally. However, we have a little, very short time to go to the global market. And for those of the people, both from inside and outside of China, they do not really understand the company. And they also don't know about what really happened in China, especially like people or politicians, or the media in US. They thought China did change a lot, but they don't believe there's such companies like Sinopec at that time that they can using the market way to compete with the international oil companies. So this is something need to be built, which I believe the trust and the understanding. So this is not just because of the medias like bankers or PR companies. I think the whole world, including people in China, they are learning. They are trying to understand what's really happening. And this is not just to say in US. I just let you know, even in China at that time, a lot of people don't understand why I did this. Because this involved very big chunk of money. You know, perhaps a lot of people know Three Gorges in China, that this project spent 30 years about whole China efforts, and this involved about almost 100 billion RMB, which when I start to acquire Unico, the money amount almost the same as that. So the whole China people just surprised. They said, why you did this? How you know this worth this much? So this is something happening here in China, and same thing there in US. They said, why Chinese company can do this? They must be a government decision. So a lot of things that they don't really understand. So I think that's natural. That will happen, if not by me, someday somebody will do the same. So through that period, I think that both the politicians from US and in China, they all keep changing. They are changing towards that as a more friendship. So after that, I did a lot of deals. Actually, I invest now both from Sinopec and Sinopec through my hands. It's close to about $10 billion in US, but it was quite smooth. I think just understanding. And also for Chinese companies, you need to be building your image, reputation, and being understood.
That is a point that you made. If I can quote 3 sentences when you accepted the Legend of Leadership Award, I thought spoke to that point you made very eloquently. You said, when we Chinese companies are involved with the world, with our leaders engaged in very public ways, we are all changing ourselves. This is far more uncertainty as the world is changing. What we knew in the past is not enough for forecasting the future, so we all must continue to keep learning. We are learning how to work together with our international peers. Without them, I would not be running a successful state-owned company. Don't worry about the differences and concerns between us. The more we understand each other, the more we can eventually work things out together. None of the countries can meet the challenges before the whole human race alone. Only working together and learning from each other can we meet the challenges. Well, you actually went to college in the U.S. at USC, but you also worked for a non-Chinese company. What was the value of that non-Chinese experience in giving you this perspective in leadership?
You know, those experiences working with international oil companies has built up the mindsets which the way of thinking is more or less with the international oil companies and the people in the West. Actually, the lot of value, that common value being recognized or adapted by the Western and being adapted by myself and my company. So there's a lot of things that really taken place was because the mindset changes of people, and this including the leadership. So this is something that we keep learning, keep changing ourselves, keep adapting ourselves more properly to either compete or cooperate with our partners. So this is something that we have to change ourselves. This is not just myself or my company. I think there's the whole Chinese company doing the same. And just because we started to go to a global stage in a very short period of time. So we'll still keep learning.
Mr. Fu, we're hoping we can keep this link on and you'll stay with us you're on a very big screen in the room here, but if you would stay with us as we go into a question and answer session. My original plan was, of course, to squeeze you guys into 10 minutes, which usually means 6 minutes of Q&A, and my fellow panelists told me that was unacceptable, and even Indra's market research with her own class last night at a late session, they advised her to make sure they cut me off by now. So we go into Q&A quite a bit earlier. So Mr. Fu, if you'd stay on for the informal question and answer dialogue, please, if anybody has an issue, raise your hand and we'll spirit microphones over to you. Yes, yes, Indra? Jim Atwood right there.
Market research with the class of 80, which was the best class to graduate from SOM. So I'd like you to talk about us with some deference.
Well, what made it the best class as the mic is coming over?
We should ask our class of 80.
Yeah.
Rosemary, where's the class of 80? Everybody's here.
Jim,
everybody's there. Linda Mason, Peter Watkins, Ned Lamont, the best class. Wouldn't you say so, Linda? Absolutely.
Linda,
yeah.
how can you fault that, right? Yes. That's quite a galaxy of stars in that class, a tremendous portfolio. Yes, Jim Atwood. Jim is with Carlyle Group and ran strategy at everybody else in the telecom business before that.
but a proud Yale undergrad.
And a former student of whose?
Professor Sonnenfeld?
Yes.
Okay.
1984, 2 rows back, left-hand side.
Yeah,
Right?
there you go. There you go. At an Augusta institution a little further north.
Another institution we won't
Yes.
mention here today, yeah.
So a question for both Indra and Jeff. You guys are both classic high-quality CEOs, and so I'm sure you're talking to your boards all the time about succession. And I also know your companies have terrific deep benches of high-quality leaders. So I'm just curious on this whole issue of brand and public persona and sort of personal identity relative to the company identity. How important is that a consideration as you start evaluating your leaders and your potential successors?
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. For us, not so much. I mean, you're asking about the potential and our ability to judge whether someone that succeeds me would have some kind of reasonable public interaction skills. Is that what you're asking?
Or just the fit with the persona that's developed for Time Warner today?
No, not so much. And the reason I say it is, if you think about Time Warner, I don't know how much all of you know about it, it's a construction of mergers. It's a bit unique. You know, Time and Warner were the biggest merger in the media history. Both had been organized since 1923. Then Turner was added, invented by Ted Turner. Then AOL and all the controversy. We had a big music company, we had a giant cable company. So what that is has changed a lot, and we don't really view that as the key. I think the issue for us is effective managing, which in the media business basically means keeping your share position so that you can attract the best content. Little side note, if you saw Michael Bay, the director, with that intro, what it proves is the old adage in Hollywood and in the TV business. It's all about the writing. So you got to have the right. But what we need for our company, and every media company needs this, is essentially very good ability to manage change and to manage business model evolution. At any intellectual property company, pharmaceutical, software, media, our product is virtual, it's not physical. So, you know, you can watch a copy of Harry Potter for 0 incremental cost to the entity that gives it to you. That's good in one way because it can reduce distribution cost and makes media products ever more interesting for human beings, 7 billion of them as we go forward. It's challenging, on the other hand, because we like to get paid for what we do. And if you can deliver extra copies for nothing, imagine if you could get an extra 1 billion gallons of soft drink for nothing. So that's what we're sorting for, if you want soft drinks for nothing.
But, you know, Jeff,
let's just let me pick up where Jeff left off. From a succession perspective, if you have visible CEOs, make succession harder because you've got to make sure your successors are also visible so that when there's a transition, people don't say, who is this person? Here's the issue. I think media tries to humanize companies because when you talk about PepsiCo, the entity, or GE, the entity, nobody can relate to this abstract entity. That's why they name ships, they name hurricanes, because it's easier to talk about Hurricane Andrew or Irene, not hurricane number 2, 3, and 4, okay? It doesn't make sense. So everybody tries to humanize something. The CEO is the manifestation of that humanization process. So what we CEOs try to do is to take the next level and showcase them through the process. But typically what the media does, you showcase your CFO, your next person, they'll say, they'll always write about the CEO. And I wondered why that was the case. Then quiz some of the media guys, they get extra bonus points if they get an interview with the CEO as opposed to somebody from the C-suite. So those incentives have to change in the media world. If it does, I think we can do a good job of building succession because I think in a succession process, a CEO should be judged by how they showcase not just themselves, but the whole team. Because everybody should see the depth of the team, and also as the transition happens, nobody should get nervous about the transition because all of the next level are completely known to the investors, to the media, and they say, look, we know these people, let's just carry on. That's what needs to happen.
You too have restructured your leadership team, some because of a sad, tragic loss of a great friend and star in the PepsiCo world, and some just because of repositioning of units and things. And I just wonder if the both of you, either of you, can think of examples, or Mr. Fu can supply an example where your team has challenged you, contradicted you, or, you know, Jeff, I think in one case, even your board challenged you when you had a major media merger. You're going down a certain path with
AOL?
Well, that one, I know you challenged them, but
which one?
Well, since we're off the record, I can't say CNN, ABC, but...
Oh, no, you could.
We're on the record,
there was a time in the early 2000s when we were thinking about, and everyone was in the news business. If you think of CBS, NBC, ABC, News, CNN, et cetera, there's a lot of news cost, and there's been a finite amount of news revenue in the TV news business. So all of those companies have been and will continue to look at whether they can essentially rationalize not just cost, but by putting things together on a global basis, create a better product. Interactive with that is that the television news audience around the world is essentially not growing, it's growing older, and the younger people are getting it on the internet. So there's a pivot in news gathering electronically of what goes on TV, what goes on online. And those things lead to structural investigations. So we had one, we almost did it. It was very hard, though, as you could imagine, to take the 24-hour news operation of a CNN, Fox News, et cetera, and try to mix it with a broadcast news half-hour operation, which is what the network news are, all of them. So that's why we didn't do it, but it's not a mysterious or sensitive subject.
So you back off a plan. Indra, can you think of a pivot that you've had because the team challenged the direction where you're going?
Sure, all the time. I mean, the mark of a good CEO is surrounding yourself with people who can also disagree with you. And I'm surrounded by 12 direct reports who disagree with me at various points in time. But that the value of the debate and then getting to the right answer is the challenge of and the great privilege of being a CEO, because you can get to the right answer for the company and the shareholders by surrounding yourself with outstanding people who can look at issues from different points. But I'm not going to go into specifics, Jeff, but it happens on a weekly basis with the team. Small decisions, big decisions. We fight it out, we argue it out, and then we get to the right answer and move on.
We should ask make sure Mr. Fu gets to weigh
Yeah,
in.
thank you. Mr. Fu?
If I can consider this a kind of a challenge or from the teams, might be when there's a crisis facing the company or being criticized by the public, when there's anything that public do not satisfied, that my team want me to be there to talk to them. So this, I believe this is not really challenge, but this show the trust and the cooperation, and this is a team spirit. Whenever there's a really crisis, that I will be the only one to deal with the public. And so the team are then excellently on their own job to deliver. So this is actually this is show a good cooperation and the trust.
Since you raised the issue of crisis, and since the time we saw you last, there of course has been a tragic crisis back home, and I know you'll be able to see this video, but we might lose your image as we play it. If I could ask my group to bring this up, thanks. This just happened the end of November.
The death toll from Friday's oil pipeline blast in the port city of Qingdao in Shandong province has risen to 55, with over 130 injured. State news agency Xinhua reported that the pipeline, which belongs to China's largest oil refiner, state-owned Sinopec, ruptured at 3 a.m. It leaked oil into the city's drainage system for a quarter of an hour or so before the supply was shut off. Workers were dispatched to clean up the spill, but several hours later, at around 10:30 a.m. on Friday, there were two large explosions. These tore up roads, tossed cars into the air, smashed windows and damaged buildings. Oil seeped into the sea and about 18,000 residents were evacuated following the explosions. The head of Sinopec, Chengyu, apologized for the accident on Saturday. Authorities said the oil had leaked into underground utility pipes, which may explain the power of the blasts. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited some of the injured on Sunday. He called for increased safety awareness and warned that any individuals or companies found responsible would face severe punishment. As might be expected, the online community has not been slow to react to the disaster, and to find out exactly what's been said, let's head over now to our researcher, Julia Liu. So, Julia, Xinhua has also pointed out that since 2010 there have been no less than 6 major accidents involving Chinese petrochemical companies like Sinopec, but the loss of life and devastation make this one particularly awful. What's the initial reaction been over the last couple of days?
Well, as you can imagine, a mixture of sympathy for the dead and injured and their loved ones, and also quite a bit of anger at how something like this could happen.
Now, when the Sinopec chief executive, that gentleman, Mr. Chengyu, apologized for the accident on Saturday, he said the company would give a thorough explanation to the public. What sort of explanation are net users hoping for?
Well, from what I can see, most net users feel the priority now is to deal with the aftermath of the accident and look after the victims. But many like Bi Dianlong on Sina.com also want prompt answers. And he says, the earlier the cause of the accident and those responsible are determined, the easier it will be to appease people's anger. While Yugong25 has concerns about the response from the entire industry, not just Sinopec.
You know, demand for response from the entire industry, and thank you. Mr. Fu, given that just horrible tragedy, and our condolences, and I'm so sorry about that loss of life and of this disaster, but you responded immediately. I saw an awful lot of coverage about the surprising amount of relative transparency on company websites, on some China websites, your own personal presence. But you also talked just minutes ago not just about the external constituencies, but the importance that the CEO has in a time of crisis for internal constituencies. Can you comment on any of that?
Yes, this is the most serious accident that never ever happened in our company's history. And this was terrible accident that caused 62 deaths and 136 injuries. I would convey my sincere condolences to the victims of the accident and extend my deepest sympathy to the injured persons and their families. I was together with my management team the first time, the immediate time that we went to the site of the accident, and myself and other management team was on the site for 4 days and nights, serving our rescue efforts. And also we take immediate efforts to apologize to the city people and to the whole Chinese people. And this is our responsibility. And even though this is the explosion was
Hopefully we can get that restored if we can work to restore the link. I told you we'd be pushing the frontiers, but I can reassure you it was not the teleprompter that blew up on us. But it's a perfect time as we try to restore that link. For Indra, there were times where there was some malicious product tampering intrusions and the safety of the perceived public safety of the PepsiCo trust, and I think PepsiCo responded in a way that was very different than Brand X did in a comparably timed public safety issue. If you either comment on that kind of thing or a major flood that wiped out, I think, a lot of the Quaker Oats facilities that were in Iowa a few years ago.
Just picking up where he left off, and then I hope we go to questions from the audience, Jeff. I think
another teleprompter blew out on us.
I think the real thing is when good things are happening, let your lieutenants go out there and talk about it. If something bad happens, if there's a crisis, it's the CEO's responsibility. Just be out there, be as visible as you can, calm the troops, take the responsibility for the fix, for the problem and the fix, and just get on with it. And you cannot delegate problems. That's a simple message on crisis management.
You can't delegate the bad news. Oh, no. Here we are back. Thanks. Hi, Mr. Fu. You're back with us now. And this is a perfect time to open up with Indra just commented on the CEO taking responsibility, as you did, to be on the scene and not to delegate bad news. Mr. Fu, you know, many times there's a cynical admonition in the West that it is the captain who announces shore leave, the good news on the ship, and it's the first mate who gets stuck when you have to cancel shore leave to deliver the bad news. And Indra's reversing that equation, and obviously Mr. Fu has, and I'm sure, Jeff, you have as well. Can we open up for comments and questions? Yes, Fred, right embedded in the center. Oh, somebody already has a mic. Yeah. Can you ask the question as we get another mic to Fred? Please go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi, Jeff. So I'm C.B. Bhattacharya. I'm a professor who studies corporate responsibility. And I wanted to pick up, Indra, on your comment about corporate responsibility is the money that you spend when you have it. And very respectfully, I want to say that in the academic discussion and with companies as well, the idea today is that that's more philanthropy. When you have the money that you can spend, we call that philanthropy. And corporate responsibility is really a realization on the part of companies that its well-being is not just tied to its own actions, but to its stewardship with respect to the environment in which it operates and the community in which it operates. And the first break that I got with regard to this thinking was actually in one of Jeff's leadership conferences way back when at Emory University, where Ben Cohen, CEO of Ben & Jerry's at the time, asked me a question, and he said, you know, we do a lot of things for our community, we do a lot of things for the environment. Can you help me understand whether those things that we do, whether those actions help sell more ice cream or not? Which was 20 years ago a rather insightful question. And so I just wanted to make that distinction, but bring the discussion more in terms of a question. So the selling part, so it's understandable that you're working on your performance and purpose, reducing consumption of plastics and water and so on. But what do you do as a CEO on the consumption front? I mean, what do you do to tell a young child, I have a 10-year-old who loves potato chips. I mean, how do I curtail his consumption of potato chips when I see someone like you saying that you want more share of the stomach, or someone wants more share of TV time? So how does a CEO balance that challenge?
That's a great point. First, you're asking me the question, but you're abdicating your responsibility as a parent, because you're supposed to take care of the child, not me. But let me come to the child in particular. No, seriously, let me talk about that. You're raising up a very good point, and I see your point. First of all, Jeff Bewkes is the worst nightmare for me because of the proliferation of channels and on-demand TV. I'm not advertising as much. That's the first point. Point number two.
We'll fix that.
What I'm saying. Let me tell you what we're trying to do. What we're trying to say to you is, we'll give you Lay's potato chips, which are fantastic, and they've got very little salt and very little fat. We'll give you baked Lay's with even less salt and even less fat. We'll give you Quaker rice snacks, which have no calories, and they taste great, almost no calories. All that we are offering is a choice. We don't want to tell you what to eat and what not to eat. We're spending money equally on all these brands. You as a parent should educate your child and make the right choices with the child to buy the right products and consume them. There's a time in the day for fun products. There's a time in the day for good-for-you products. I don't think we should let the pendulum swing one way or the other. So all that I'll say to you is, our job is to make sure that you don't have to pay more for health, or you don't have to make taste trade-offs for health. That's my job. Your job is to make sure that you educate your child and make the right choices in your family. And together we'll make music. That's the whole idea. Okay?
CB, it's a partnership. It takes a village. I thank you. Fred, thanks. Frank.
Thank you all for your candor. You've talked a lot about management. I'd like to ask you the question, number one, when you became the CEO, you had a board of directors. How did you evaluate the board, and how did you change it? And how do you currently use your board in your decision-making process?
This is publicly broadcast, right?
Well, so if we weren't public, Jeff, you would say the board that you grew up under is very different than the board you have now, right?
Yeah, but let me say, since we are, I have to change your phrasing. We don't evaluate the board, they evaluate us. And in the question of how the board evaluates its membership, it's really the board that does it, not the management. The management works.
Fred's question is still a good one. This is an uncomfortable public reflexive response that we see, right, John? It used to be you could ask a CEO, how's your board functioning? They would answer. Now they say, oh, it's not my board, it's your board, it's the owner's board. I just work there. But you could say, how's your country or how's your school? I mean, it's not. We don't own the school either. It's an issue of identification, not possession. And yet CEOs are so quick to say, well, we work for the board. But still, how does the board help you, though? And I think Fred wants to know what value.
Actually, it's a great question, because Jeff is right. I mean, the board is an independent entity, and the nominating and corporate governance of the committee decides who should get on the board. But I think the company also has a responsibility to lay out for the board what the mega trends are that are facing the company going forward, and what kind of board characteristics and qualifications you need to guide the company into the future. So what we do is we've identified the 10 mega trends that could make or break PepsiCo over the next decade. And we've looked at the qualifications of each of our board members against those characteristics. We share that with the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee and the full board. They look at that and say, where are the gaps? Where do we need to retire people or bring in new talent? And where we believe that talent cannot be filled by a board member, I'll give you an example, digital capability. The people who have all of the models for disruption are too young and they don't know anything about governing a $65 billion company.
That's right.
So what do? We say, look, you can't take a 39-year-old and put them on the board because they're not going to think about governance the way we do. So we've set up a digital advisory board of all young people, and the board's going to meet with them once a year. Management is going to meet with them 2 or 3 times a year. So shaping the board, but giving the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee enough ammunition to decide what kind of a board is needed for this company, not for the company of yesterday, but the company of day after tomorrow is critically important, because strategy is a critical part of the board's process, and the choice of a CEO. And the choice of the CEO should not be who's going to lead the company of yesterday, but who's going to shape the company of day after tomorrow. So we have to create this a source document for the board, which is what we do.
Ted, don't you think this might be the last time in this room where somebody can get away with saying 39 years old is too young?
To be on the board of directors of a $65 billion company and understand corporate governance with all its glory. Jeff, finish the statement.
No, absolutely. Well, some news did break since the time everybody was filing in the room here, and that was this news is China disciplines chief of state oil refiner Sinopec over November blast that killed now 62 people. Chinese authorities are holding the chief of China's largest oil refiner responsible for a November pipeline explosion that killed 62 people. Now, this is the AP's version, but let's see how they quote Xinhua news agency. Oh, more news coming in. That the State Council approved unspecified sanctions against Fu Chengyu, chief of state oil company Sinopec, which operated the pipeline. Fu is China's most prominent public figure in the industry. Xinhua said the cabinet also disciplined 47 other people, including the mayor of the eastern point of port city of Qingdao, where the blast occurred. Wilbur, you've had experience in absolutely every global industrial situation out there, and crises have been some of them. At one point, you had a mine disaster, I remember, and as all the different news channels were calling around to come up with what academics wanted to wander in and talk about something we didn't know anything about, to everybody's amazement, you were already on air everywhere. I think to CNBC's anger, I think you went off to Brand X first, and they still haven't forgiven you. But you thought, you know what, they don't identify me as the CEO, but I am the ultimate in that particular situation. I'm going to be out there, talk about the safety issues, talk about the loss, talk about financial aid for the families. Remember, you just instinctively went out there as not a public person.
Well, I'd like to correct the record. CNBC has forgiven me.
Oh, they have forgiven you. But the person who was angry left and has gone to Brand X. I think it was Maria Bartiromo who was mad. Maybe we have a different mic over there.
Okay, now it's on.
Thanks.
Is this on now?
Perfect, thanks.
And I felt that the ultimate owner had to show his face to the public and take accountability for the tragedy. Not that we did anything that caused it. Both the state and the federal investigators pronounced that it was a freak lightning strike that ignited the fumes in the mine. So it was not that there was any wrongdoing, but there were lives lost. There was a very serious tragedy. So the other thing we did, we immediately set up a foundation, and we contributed to it. We got others to provide immediate help to the families of the mine workers who were hurt, because the insurance and all that would take a while to come through. And so we generated quite a lot of money into that to provide some immediate help. So that was the way that we reacted. But I must say it was not fun being cross-examined on TV about people being killed.
Any advice to Mr. Fu, knowing him as you do and appreciating him as we do, as a courageous and honorable leader in a very difficult situation? Any thoughts?
Well, I think he's handling it right. As you know, I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Fu. I presented him with the Leadership Award at the conference in Beijing. So I'm a great admirer of his. I don't know what more he could possibly do than what he is doing, but I think he's right not to try to hide from it.
Mr. Fu, I know it was not easy to comment in much detail before this evening's investigation results came out. Now that the investigation is out, is there anything you do differently than you were doing yesterday?
No. Actually, that either myself or the company, you must be responsible and accountable for the whole accidents and the losses. So we, whatever the treatment, either by the government or by the public, that we are publicly making apologize again after this announcement, the treatment announcement by the government. And so what we can do is continue to support the local business community of the people, and support the families of the faculty, the deaths and the families and the injured. So we are going to build a lot of things in that community to show our responsibility. And also, in addition to this, the direct losses is about $120 million. And this will be covered by the insurance that we took. But I think for long way, we need to review all our operations in different cities. You know, we have about 20,000 kilometers of pipeline around the country. So there's a lot of similarities or similar issues that being conflict with the city growth. So this is something we are going to spend a lot of money to rebuild our facility. So this is something that we are going to work together with the different cities of government and to reorganizing some of the future build-ups and our facilities. So this we need to rethinking about the growing need of the urbanization. So this is really something we learned both by the company and the government.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. Indra, I know you've done extensive preparation for crises of all different sorts, from product safety, reputation issues and things, and all parts of your enterprise, from communications and security, and all financial people are involved regularly in testing it. Jeff, I don't know, do you guys do any crisis preparation? You can always have an integrity issue in a news story. Before you owned CNN, they'd sometimes had some problems, and others have. Do you have any ongoing preparation?
Yeah, we do, because we have incorrect news problems that we have to get at. We have the possibility. There's a lot of risk to journalists worldwide. They're operating in war zones, and so, as Mr. Fu, we could have people killed. And we've had a lot of times when we had to pull our people out. The very famous time when Ted left the reporters in Baghdad at that first war, which did make CNN a good bit of its reputation, but we don't always follow that view that, you know, we ought to leave people in a place of danger in order to burnish the company's brand. That's a trade-off where we err on the side of safety. And then finally, there are, and you all see this, incidents now, unfortunately, all over the world of people committing violence in shopping malls, movie theaters, and so on. And those can be very problematic. We had that for the opening of our Batman film 2 years ago in Aurora, Colorado, which you all may remember. And we had to pull a lot of activities immediately to stop that from continuing.
Getting the message, I think that it's about time to wrap up. We are right on schedule. You know, our goal today, and I want to thank Mr. Fu, Jeff Bewkes, and of course Indra Nooyi for helping us conquer what is a challenge. And coming into a new building, we can see that there was a model of modernity, of breaking with tradition, yet somehow celebrating the SOM legacy, but in a very different world. With the technology, with the architecture, with the issues we want to embrace, there's a certain freshness and liveliness that's very hard to balance off against a 320-year-old institution. And H.L. Mencken complained about old universities like this. He said they keep to often teach living languages as if they were dead and dead languages as if they're alive. And you can see we've had some very, very lively material as fresh as the breaking headlines. And I want to thank all of you for your trust, your candor, your collaboration. And you know, it's a very, very special thing that you've had to share that trust. Thomas More once said, it's as fragile as a liquid cupped in your hands. Once you separate the fingers, it's forever gone. I want to thank you guys for a wonderful job. Thank you.
Let me add my thanks. I often try to think through takeaways, and here it's difficult. But one is just how complex and multidimensional the task of being a CEO is. And it's just been fascinating for me to listen to Indra and Jeff and Mr. Fu. Secondly, I thought Mr. Fu's real-time response to this breaking news was fascinating and classic. Textbook, right on target. Wilbur's right. I mean, we have great admiration for Mr. Fu, but not only to say he was going to go back and reiterate the apology, but also to assess other situations where this could happen. It's exactly the right thing to do. So we want to express again our admiration for him and thank him for his willingness to stay up late and connect with us. It's just very impressive. Third, I feel like I want to grab Jeff and Indra and Mr. Fu and ask them questions about how this brand issue extends to their relationship with governments, which I know is a big issue for each of them, and it varies around the world. This is one of the big issues that we think is important at the school, and I know each of them has so much to say. But Jeff, you can't do everything in one session, and that's the fourth takeaway for me. I so much appreciate Jeff's orchestration of these conversations, and you know, he makes it look so easy, but I know how much preparation goes into that. And I want to thank Jeff Sonnenfeld, my colleague. What lies ahead? Managing creative talent is the session in the class of 1980, described by Indra as the greatest class in Yale SOM history. That's in the class of 1980 classroom. It's also classroom 2400. The future of the global financial system is here in Zhang Auditorium. And healthcare innovation is in an unnamed classroom. My goodness. That's in classroom 2200, and we'll resume at 11 o'clock. Feel free to get some coffee, mingle. Thank you again.